more people. I hope we'll have more people in a while, but we have to start. So perhaps, Hero, you may start with the housekeeping notes.
Yes, hello everyone from me from Amsterdam. Me and Vicky are on a mission this week. However, we are following what is up in the platform so we can share with you some progress. I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Yes. Okay, we're a few people today, so I invite everyone to open their camera so that it can be more interactive if you wish so. Although I saw in a comment in the evaluation, which we can discuss if you want. After the white picture of the oceans and why they're important in week 1, and the challenges and risks that the ocean faces in week 2. Now in week 3, we are dealing with how to, also through management, we can face these challenges and move forward. Our last week, next week, is devoted to education and action for the ocean. So things have not changed in terms of registrations. We're a little bit below 200, and out of them, about half follow content, and even if we don't have people today, they then log on and they see the videos that are uploaded. So this is the reason why we are recording. And already a bit less than 50, I think we're 48 or something, have completed the tasks for week 1, and a little bit less than 30 have completed the tasks for week 2. I think I will skip that since we are so few, and maybe comment a little bit on the evaluation of week 3. There is not much interactivity in week 3, so it takes you, I see, it takes you time. You're still interacting with week 1 and week 2, or if not the people that are now here in this call, the participants of the course. Specifically for week 3, what you have mentioned so far concerns that you would like more examples linked to everyday management. So you would like to hear more case studies and views from experts, managers. You would like to have the opportunity to discuss also the assignments that you upload. So each week we have a basic question on which we ask you to write a short text with your views or local examples. So in week 3, we asked for examples that you considered could be piloted in a BR. So since we are now in the Ocean Decade, in the next 9-10 years, we will have the opportunity to develop ocean literacy initiatives inside biosphere reserves. And we asked you for specific ideas, for examples that could be piloted in the BR where you work or that is close to you. And I don't know if you have the opportunity, and if we have with us people that have shared already an assignment in week 3, you're welcome to share with your views on that. Someone asked for not recording the discussion in order for the meeting to be more lively and authentic. This is something that we take note of. We will see how we respond. I think at this stage recording is necessary. So what about the contents of week 3? We discussed about ways forward, and we discussed about some instruments and the tools that policymakers and the scientists use for the protection of the marine environment, and some sustainable solutions. We also showed some examples coming from the business sector. in response to the risks and threats that we have discussed in the previous week. Also, we had Jonathan, who shared a presentation on how to achieve and why it is important to achieve ocean literacy in the BRs and what is the expected role of the BRs in this process. Last but not least, we had the overall lecture from Professor Skoulos on integrative environmental management within a BR, and a specific example coming from the Mediterranean region as well. So for today's structure, and since we are a small group, we are 15 right now online, we propose to start with some responses to your already posed questions. I don't know if Mr. Harilau has already joined from Cyprus. We had the opportunity to meet him during phase 1 of this hybrid university. We have Jonathan from UNESCO with us and Professor Skoulos, of course, and then maybe we can have an open discussion on a focus question. So for the time being, that's it from me. So I give the floor to Professor. You are muted. We can't hear you.
Yes, sorry. Thank you very much, Iro, and we can start answering the questions we have received. There are 5, 6 questions. I don't know if Jonathan wants to start, or if you want me to start, Jonathan, whatever. You want to do...
Go for it, Michael. Go for it. You start, and then I'll comment.
I may start. Okay. So the first 1, 2, 3, 4 questions are all related, actually. They are not so much related to the management per se. They ask a general question is, what is the most challenging aspect in day-to-day environmental management, and how do you overcome it? It's a difficult question because the challenges differ from place to place, but also from time to time. They are not the same every year. You may have a challenge and address it in a successful way, or there are challenges that are always there. I must say there are perhaps the most difficult thing is the limited ability of the manager to enforce the management, to apply the management, even sometimes regulations, either because of vested interest of powerful stakeholders, industrial, farmer, landowners, or ignorance and the lack of understanding by a critical mass of people. This is why in biosphere reserves in particular, we are from the beginning, we insist in having the local authorities of the region co-signing and having at least a group of authorities agreeing on the basics of a management. But still, this is one of the big challenges. This has to do also with the level of institutionalization of the management plan, and also the way in which the authorities that have the power to control and implement by fining or by actually using legal means could actually cooperate and have the power for that, because many times the management authorities of a park do not have this this power. They have to go to specific bodies that have this ability. Now, this is one type of challenges, and the way to overcome, as I said, is from the beginning to have also the involvement of some authorities that have power for implementation and compliance. The second is which is complementary, is the general public to have the support for the implementation of measures of the general public living in or around the biosphere reserve or the protected area. This requires a strategy. The strategy of, first of all, of information from the very beginning, awareness raising, education at the school level and through schools to the families, but also strategy on the messages. The messages should be balanced, not only protection. Protection is very important for protection of biodiversity, but also the sustainable development and economic prosperity of the region through soft, compatible to the protection measures. And there are many, including different types of tourism, different types of products, agricultural production, crafts, and many other things. So you need to have the ownership and support of the local community. The two go together, because if the public opinion is with you, you can enforce regulations also easier. So this is more or less, I mean, if you ask the most challenging aspects, more or less in the day-to-day environmental management, is the combination of these two things. And the third one, which is perhaps the starting point, but of course you need to feed it with new also ideas, is the vision. I mean, you have to come with a vision about the future. You say this area needs to be like that in 5 years, in 10 years, and we can do it. We don't have enough water, we'll bring the water, we find the way to manage the water. We don't have this, we are going to do that. So you need to come with a vision which is the direction of the aspirations of the people. You have to show them a better future for them and their children, and link it with the other two, link it with the protection and the sustainable development of the region. So these three elements, sometimes you start from how we can get rid of something that everybody agrees that is incompatible for the area. You have to start from the floor, and the roof, because you know, the expectations differ, comes later. We start from what we want to get rid of, what is absolutely necessary that everybody understands to protect, and you build on that. So this is something you need to have a plan. A plan with a vision for the future, long term, medium term, and short term. This is the first, because many of the things of the other questions you have are linked with that. For example, you say, how do you expect professionals to engage in field-based work? There is another one, how do you expect to support professionals? I think is similar. And also ocean literacy there. How do you overcome the dialogue issues with the local stakeholders? Ocean literacy is a mission, but cannot turn into a war without instruments, especially for younger professionals. How do you expect to support them? And there is another one. Can you share tips how an environmental manager can infuse ocean literacy within the management plan of his/her site? I try to answer the first, and I'll come back. Perhaps Jonathan will continue, and if needed, I come back. How do you overcome the dialogue, the problem with dialogue issues with local stakeholders? I said already some things. The dialogue starts with answering the anxieties of the people, the anxieties about their future, but also the anxieties from misunderstanding the purpose of the establishment of a biosphere reserve or a protected area, fearing that they will have reduced opportunities for development and reduced future opportunities in the area. You have to explain that this is just the opposite. And you start with this, answering the different questions. You need to have knowledge. So it is important to have enough knowledge of the concepts, but also of the region, and arguments, again, arguments not only for the protection per se, which is important, but also of how the protection does not harm the opportunities of sustainable development. So this is how you start, and you get with them solutions. Explore and exploit solutions, ways to give solutions to their problems. This is the way you start. You have to become friends with them, to be part of the community and see with hope your presence there. This is very important. Not to start with, giving instructions and saying, not do that, don't do that, don't do that. You have to come and say, let's see what better we can do. That is the starting point. Now, so this is not for a war. You should not discuss about a war. Even if they are hostile, you are not. You go and in a humble way to say, I'm here to help you. And your instruments, I repeat, are your knowledge, of course, your courage, and also the convincing power, the power to convince people with arguments, and your attitude which from the beginning, it is very important that you and the persons in the management committee or staff share the same view. And all of them are friendly, humble, and you don't threaten them. You explain that sometimes you may have to say that something is wrong, but is wrong at the end of the day for them as well. So this is what we say, avoiding war. I leave how to infuse ocean literacy. I'll come back. I think Jonathan will say more on that, and then I may come back. Jonathan, to you.
Thanks, Michael. No, I think you touched upon a lot of the points that I wanted to touch upon. I think one of the key aspects of a successful management of biosphere reserves and other similar sites, but this is particularly the case for biosphere reserves, is the involvement of all the different stakeholders. So, as Michael said, I think it's important to be able to find areas of common ground where you can cooperate on, and there's always the possibility to find areas of common ground, and look towards solutions more than conflict management. But that's the nature of biosphere reserves from the beginning, from their setup, is to involve a series of different stakeholders. I mean, we're talking about different stakeholders at the local level. Obviously, the people that live in biosphere reserves, different NGOs that are working on environmental aspects, social aspects, scientists, universities that can bring some of this knowledge about the sites. And then, of course, as Michael discussed, the importance of having decision makers involved in the biosphere reserve and knowing about the biosphere reserve and getting, I mean, there's when you have large sites as well, it's difficult to get all these different mayors, for example, to come together and to speak. I remember when we went to visit the Asterousia Biosphere Reserve with Michael, we went to go meet a few of the mayors, but then there's and sometimes it's very difficult. At the local level, the different parts of the biosphere reserve have different priorities that are that might not be the same, and so being a manager also entails getting these different stakeholders to speak to each other. It's not only you speaking to the different stakeholders; it's the different stakeholders speaking to each other. So it's a complex ecosystem there, but. As Michael said, there's a very, very important to have a vision, and this is a vision that's built from the bottom up as well. The idea of what you want to happen in the biosphere reserve is not something that's coming from sort of top down, the manager deciding, okay, this is what we're going to do, and this is how it's going to be done, and you're going to help me with this and that and the other. It's more a question of figuring out, based on what the biosphere reserve was created for, how it's been developed over the past years, figuring out where you want to go in the short and medium term, and figuring out how to go about it. Now I know this year's summer in Hybrid University is about ocean literacy. So in the same way that all these different theories kind of apply to biosphere reserves in general, when we're talking about the ocean, we're talking about and we're talking about sites that are in the ocean or next to the ocean. Then you have another sort of different set of stakeholders that are probably going to be involved. The stakeholders that are actually working and working in the ocean, the stakeholders that are, getting a livelihood from the ocean. And the whole management, it's even more complex when you're talking about the management of the ocean, either close to the site and then expanding as it goes out. So another level of complexity and ocean literacy can give tools to discuss the ocean with all these different stakeholders. And I think we're going to speak about that in a little bit, but And this is why ocean literacy, I think, is so important for biosphere reserves, for coastal and island biosphere reserves, for managers to be able to use the tools that are that you've seen over the past few weeks, and use those tools to educate decision makers, to educate different stakeholders about the importance of the ocean and how the ocean affects your everyday life and the interactions that you have with the different stakeholders that are part of the site. So maybe I'll stop there, at least for that first question, and I'm happy to also interact a bit more, even if we. The participants that are online are welcome to come back and forth to both Michael and myself, so we can kind of have a little bit of a dynamic going at one point. That would be great. On that note, I'm passing it back to Michael, unless somebody wants to come in.
I don't know if we have also the third speaker, Mr.
No,
Harry Lau.
He's not online, no.
Okay, well, we'll see later. Well, as Jonathan said, when you try to actually put emphasis on ocean literacy, and as we said, ocean literacy mostly, of course, it is for all biosphere reserves, but definitely for coastal and marine ones, it is critical. Here we have at least two different groups of messages. One group is for messages where the inhabitants have little to do. I mean, for example, in Asterousia, we have an extended marine park. In this park, we have several important species, cetaceans, very in the deep sea, several, there the inhabitants, fishermen, have a specific role, but again, not for the big depths. So we need all of the inhabitants and users to be informed about the richness and the importance of this area. Although sometimes they don't see, they see the dolphins, they see other species, but not everything. But from the moment they know that something important is there, they actually share with us the pride, and also they help us to voice to local authorities, even national authorities, the need for the protection of this area, the need for the protection of this species. So we have them informed to know their natural heritage, to understand the value of that, to be proud of that, and also sometimes get benefit from this. I mean, through well-regulated scuba diving or whatever. But at the same time, they are our strength in asking the authorities to implement protection measures for this area. And also to take measures for reducing, let's say, marine pollution in the area from whatever sources. There is where we need also to discuss focusing on the land-based sources of pollution, of disturbance, and we can have excellent results. We can have excellent results when we are approaching farmers, for example, about pesticides, about insecticides, promoting alternatives, working with the local agricultural, let's say, organization or syndicates or whatever, or with fishermen about trying to find solutions. For example, in Asterousia, we try to reduce the ghost nets and all the problems from plastics from fishermen, and so on and so forth. So we introduce in our management special measures, practices that either are not from the beginning there, or they are there but require further strengthening. And also we have general practices for, let's say, reducing overall plastics, single-use plastics, and how we can do that. An example again from the region, we try to approach schools through schools and lectures, the households, but also small enterprises, what we have in the region, beach bars, restaurants, whatever. What we have done there, because you ask about examples, is we have introduced some memoranda of understanding with this voluntary, with the small, restaurants and beach bars and others, to voluntarily replace the plastic, the single-use plastics. And if indeed their commitment is met, we give them a certificate at the end, and they can have it in their bar, in their restaurant. And this now we try to expand in the entire southern Mediterranean through an EU project. And we try actually to involve different biosphere reserves now in the southern Mediterranean. So these are some ideas on how you respond to the ocean literacy combination with what you have already. Yes, Iron.
Yes, if I can comment on the examples that you have been mentioning already. So we have this experience from this local business in Asterousia, and also in phase one of the hybrid university this year, we were also in Cyprus, where we had the opportunity to swim in a very beautiful not landscape, it's a seascape actually. And we had the first-hand experience of the tourism sector that lives from the sea. So these are very important alliance for us, I think, during the decade. We often complain that we are not enough managers, we are not enough supporters, but all these people, I think, that live from the sea have realized their value. Alongside with fishermen that you mentioned, they know that it is threatened from pollution and a series of other threats. So these are very important allies for us and can work with us to achieve the targets that are in front of us for the decade. So they are important for the ocean protections, but also for delivering the messages of ocean literacy. And we have experienced that in Cyprus, I think.
I don't know if there is any question from the floor, from you on this. I have another question from Celine that I'll try to answer later. But if there is a general an issue about how to introduce ocean literacy in the program of management, I can say that there are, in summary, three ways. The one is to have it officially, to enrich your action plan with activities that address the marine part. Second is that because there is an evolution, a rapid evolution of legislation in the Mediterranean. Not only the European, because there is in the European part, we have the Marine Strategy Framework Directive, which is a relatively new one, but is there and you can use it. And also you have the Integrated Coastal Zone Management, which is both for the northern of the Mediterranean with EU legislation, but also with the Barcelona Convention, the UN Barcelona Convention, which is also for the south. So you need to use the existing legal frameworks and use all what is there. Most countries have ratified this convention, and there is more and more work on the planning of the marine and maritime activities, space, and this helps us as managers. So in many countries, there are specific national, for example, in Greece, we have the so-called spatial plannings. And this is for the coastal areas, for the mountainous areas, for tourist installations, similar schemes are in different countries. Schemes of that give directions, general type of directions, management directions, that you, when you have to elaborate a local plan, you use several of these frameworks to dress your plan with the legal, let's say, instruments. And the other thing is, as we said before, there is a lot of legislation for activities, for land-based activities that are not directly linked with the marine environment, but indirectly, all types of pollution, all types of treatment of solid waste, of wastewaters, of avoiding littering forests, avoiding forest fires. All these kind of things exist. You need to bring them in your management plan if they are not there, and see which of these activities have a direct or indirect impact for the marine environment, including through, soil erosion and other things that at the beginning, you might not think them relevant. From the management point of view, this is what, in a nutshell, I can say. I don't know if you have any question. I see how biosphere reserves implement ESD, such as ocean literacy. Okay, we'll discuss this next week, but we can discuss also now.
And also
I may try to give an answer immediately.
And also, if we have any
Sorry?
managers, and also if we have any managers, environmental managers online, who would
Yes.
like to comment on what we discussed already.
Yes,
Please,
before getting into
yes, please take the floor. Or raise your
I
hand.
owe an answer to Celine. I will come back, I don't forget that. But if there is on the general management and the link of management, let's say, provisions for the marine part of the park, of the biosphere reserve or park, please this is a time that you contribute, you put the question to us or whatever. Martina, you wanted to say something?
Yes, Professor, thank you for the answer. The first question was mine. About the issue of dialogue with the local stakeholders. Yes, on theory, everything you said is correct. But for example, in my last experience, what I experimented is that despite I was trying to be let's say, as friendly as possible with the local stakeholders. In this case, they were professionals from the scuba diving sector, actually. And I was working in a context of a marine protected area in a special time because now they are in a vacancy situation due to the transition from the former director to the newer one. And what I experimented is that despite there is a sort of mistrust toward the local authorities, there is a great and strong willingness from the local people to be engaged and to understand in details what the protection means and how the protection can be done. For instance, during my last project, I was in charge to engage them, of course, in some capacity building sessions, in some activities in order to enforce their basic skills, you know. And what I experimented is that, for example, during the last task, which was the writing of a manual based on the local characteristics from geological and biological aspects, they tried to do this work. They performed it, I will say, well, correctly. But what I found in the end was another problem, which was the, I would say, related to what you defined before as concern from local people, because, you know, the economic aspects is always the driving force, no? And in the end, despite they were aware that this resource was for outreach purposes, for cultural and education aspects, the teaching agency behind had the commercial goal behind this work. So I was a little bit in trouble with this because I personally promoted these activities. It was also part of a wider, you know, European project, and I already presented the preliminary results in some international conferences to the wider scientific community. And so, you know, it's also a thing of trust. If you say something at the beginning and then acting locally, for example, they ask me sometimes to act without informing the local MPA because of this aspect of misunderstanding. So it's not so easy as we imagine from the back end, you know. So this is my last experience, and I'd like to discuss it with you. Thanks.
Martina, you are absolutely right, because what I describe is as if you start from scratch with nothing before you. I was threatened to be thrown in the sea in the marine park we have in the Alonissos. We started many years ago for the protection of the monk seal, and the fishermen pushed me at the very edge of they were ready to throw me into the sea. I tried my best, but what happened is that before me, they were 2-3 different organizations and groups that have taken a very, let's say, a polemic. They were part of a polemic of a war. And actually, there were 2 different groups. The one of developers that promised them, you know, wonderful, big scale tourism, and at a moment that they had nearly nothing. And the others going there and saying, don't do that, don't do that. Don't fish because of the problems with the monk seal. And they started discussing, you know, about compensations. They were not happy with the compensations, and so on and so forth. So the history behind is also something you take into account. And if possible, you have to explain to both parties that you are an honest broker of how you can find a solution to have compatible, you know, ecology, economy, you know, relationship. This is something, is not easy, it's very difficult. If, particularly if there is already a kind of polemic in the region. So this is what I have to say. You have to wait. It doesn't come, and you need to come with a plan. And the difficult thing is that a good plan is not enough to put it on paper, because if after some time, and if they support you in that, they don't see that the plan is implemented, then again you have a problem, a serious problem. You know, you are losing face, and this is something that many times happened to me, because the local authorities or the national authorities didn't actually follow their promises. So there are many levels, and I know about the difficulties for sure.
Yeah,
But,
in this case, what I think is that the real trouble is with the older generation, let's say, because with my colleagues, with the younger colleagues, even with local peoples, I interacted with the local community. So the trouble doesn't exist. This is a sort of mistrust exactly to
it is the older generation that has been betrayed by politicians many times. So they don't trust you or anybody, and they have, you know, they don't want to change. It is one of the big difficulties. But I don't know what else to say. This is the only way we know. I don't know if Jonathan wants to say something, particularly also with the need to consult also with legal experts, at least for some of the measures.
Yes, I did already, and they answered me the same things you said. So I'm right. I already wrote also to the local authority of the MPA. They registered officially everything I did there. So I think this is a sort of good thing to be happy for. And I will say I will wait, and I hope they will understand that the right way was the
Keep
previous
fingers
one.
crossed.
I will let you know. Thanks.
Jonathan,
Jonathan, please.
No, I don't really have any specific particular advice. I haven't been probably as much in that situation as Michael has, so he probably has better personal advice as to how to deal with this. Of course, when we're talking about UNESCO biosphere reserves, then there's the possibility of exchanging with others that are kind of in the same situation and other sites within the network, and so there's also that. I mean, the fact that you're part of a network gives you the ability to, because a lot of these problems are problems that are faced by many different people working in similar situations and coming up against the same challenges. So this is what we're doing here today, but it's something that can be continued and should be continued, working through the different the networks. And that's one of the reasons that the UNESCO and the MAB program created this network, and is promoting the growth of the network is for these different ideas of sustainable development, how to promote sustainable development, how to be able to manage sites in an integrated way, bringing on board all the different stakeholders in all these different countries. This is why the MAP, one of the reasons the MAP program was created. Obviously, it's a scientific program, so initially it was also created to advance science on biodiversity and also on looking at the educational aspects. So trying to educate and to bring awareness to all these different issues at the local level. So I think that's what I would bring to this specific point in conversation, and best of luck and fingers crossed from my side as well.
Thank you. Let me try to answer to Celine. Celine has put a question: are there any examples of combining food production, consumption, and overfishing? And she, of course, made the comment that we all know that there is too much food which is wasted, and due to expiration dates. I think that there are different issues. We can, of course, when we are discussing about education for sustainable development, all these issues are there. If you try to combine it with the management of coastal areas, marine biosphere reserves, or with ocean literacy, you may start at least in a much more, let's say, focused way. For example, overfishing might be the opening, the entry point, or most, in many areas, you have fishermen in most of the biosphere reserves or protected areas. Either you have fishermen complaining that there is not enough fish because, and then you start, what is the reason for that? In southern Crete, we have at the moment the intrusion of alien species. So this is the main reason why we don't have enough fish. In other cases, and most cases in the Mediterranean, we have overfishing. 70% of our resources, of our stocks, are overfished in the Mediterranean. So it is something from where you may start. And you may start asking also about the side catches, what you have, the bycatches. And this is an important issue because many of the fishermen focus on commercial species and get rid of the bycatches. traditionally, we don't get rid of that. And it is good in a biosphere reserve, let's say, to bring this issue in. We have even the famous bouillabaisse in Marseille, but cacaviar in Greece and many other fish soups were and are from bycatches. And if you can have a fisherman bringing this to a restaurant, and in many cases, there is already this connection established. And you can have something from a restaurant or an old lady, an old man to discuss how they used to, to get all these small fishes and make something out of them. And the restaurants, now that they have it as a specialty and these kind of things, you may start the discussion and bring the issue of food and overfishing or fisheries in general, and you start this. By starting this, you discuss about food production and even other products. You get into this area and you start discussing also about other types of food produced in the area, and you may even touch upon food waste. And because food waste starts from the production in the field or in the sea, as I said, and goes up to what we leave in the refrigerator for a long time and then you throw or whatever this is how you introduce also this issue for students. You need to start from something that they observe, and you catch this and you open, actually you start opening the discussion and you take it to the directions you want. So yes, indeed, there are ways to do that, but you have to be relevant. So you have to start always by something that is directly linked with the type of the biosphere reserve and the type of the activities that you have there. And your allies, who could be, as I said, fishermen, restaurants, or inhabitants, presenting all recipes, for example, which is a cultural and not non-tangible element. All these can be combined.
I see,
I don't know.
Professor, that we have Mr. Harilau. He has joined us well. Maybe we can brief him a little bit on the discussion to sum up what we have been discussing
Pandelis.
so far.
Yeah, Mr. Harilau, we just had a few questions. Mostly the questions are about the challenges, the ways in which, what are the main challenges in environmental management in biosphere reserves and protected areas, and ways in which you include in your management plans specific provisions for the marine part, of this. And also the most difficult is perhaps how you can communicate that and to the inhabitants, and how you can manage to convince those of the inhabitants that have either vested interests or no respect for the work we are doing or something like that. I don't know if you want to comment on that.
Thank you, Professor. Hi to everyone. Sorry
Guys,
for
we
joining
don't see
late.
you.
Yeah. I have a
Problem with the camera.
I have a weak signal, so I
Okay, no
got it off.
problem.
So
Go
that
ahead, go ahead.
So sorry for joining late. I was actually good timing. I was attending a meeting which is closely related to what you are discussing. An area which suffers from coastal erosion, not only due to climate change, but the building of dams and the lack of silting. So an area near an estuary, which is suffering from coastal erosion, and we've been just presented with a magical solution. Let's build breakwaters everywhere. You know, this is the magical solution now in Cyprus. Everybody wants to have breakwaters to preserve or even create sandy beaches. So in essence, development is the number one risk and the number one challenge. In Cyprus and in other islands, I suppose, in other coastal areas, nice clear water, very attractive beaches in the East Mediterranean, limited space, and so from our experience, I think the authorities everywhere have not yet realized the critical tip point or the critical after tip point that we are in. I think it's in human nature to wait until the last moment when you start getting catastrophes to decide that we need to take action. So this is a very difficult issue, and everybody sees on TV and in the media the cyclones and the tropical storms and the drought all over the place. But unless the average citizen feels this personally, I think they don't take it into account seriously. And at the end of the day, the people who try to convey these messages are considered to be at least romantic tree huggers, in that sense, which is it's the unfortunate truth. Also, people don't have the natural capacity to look ahead, think in longer term, think holistically, and especially think about the cumulative impact of everything that goes on in these areas.
But this is part of our job. This is one of the main issues we have, because our colleagues here and our younger actually professionals with us know many of these issues, and we try to help them to overcome these difficulties. So let us hear from you what you suggest in front of this problem you very well described, which is accurate. What do you suggest and how do you react to that?
Yeah, and even when you convince some people, then there is also the lack of trust in in politics, in politicians, in the authorities, in the experts. A lot of people are not trusting the experts anymore. And I think COVID and other things have contributed to all this. All these fake news, all this propaganda that can take place have reduced the level of trust that average people have in the authorities. There is also in the politics, in the local politics, there is also a lot of greenwashing. You know, you get governments who will put on a mask for a green mask, so to speak, especially before the elections. So there is the issue of greenwashing. There is also in Cyprus, there is the limitation in the NGO role, the NGO capacity. The capacity of the NGOs is limited, in my opinion, and which may not be true in some other societies, in some other countries. These the NGOs may have a more important role to play. So, in essence,
so your conclusion is very pessimistic, from what I see. Is there something on which we can actually invest in order to reverse this picture?
I think there is the longer term solution. I think is investing in the new generations in education, but the question is, are we too late to educate the 10-year-olds, and by the time they become influencers or active citizens, it will be too late. There won't be enough environment to manage or to conserve. I think that there is a lot of social and philosophical background that one needs to invest in educating the society in general, because the major problem, I think, at the social level is what we call the tragedy of the commons. People do not appreciate this issue. We have a common resource, in this case, the oceans, could be the atmosphere, it could be the CO2 emissions, it could be anything, which is a common resource, and it is difficult at the local level to realize the contribution of each individual, of each small society, of each small country to these common problems. So what is really happening is what we call the death by 1,000 cuts, slowly. And that's what we are up to reversing at the moment.
Okay, so thank you for your views. I think that we are here because we still believe that we can do something. And as you said, one part is education. I don't mean only education in primary and secondary schools, but also at university level and everywhere, because these are the leaders of tomorrow, immediate leaders. I have a lot of hope with my students, not all of them, but many of them. And I have also some confidence even within the economy leaders. They understand that the environment and the ecosystem services are helping them. Not all of them understand that, but also people in the tourism sector started understanding that the big capital should not be spoiled, because if they want to be in business in the coming decades, they have to respect the environment. So there are already important changes. The society changes rapidly, not in the same way in all countries. I used to say that the societies are like long caterpillars, and there is time, inertia between the head and the tail. And there is, we require to find ways for the transmission of these messages to the tail. And the modern, among the odd things of new technologies, there are also nice things. And even the different types of media could help us there. We need to understand better the changes in our society. The messages we used to transmit only 10 years ago are outdated now. And we need actually to understand that nobody can afford not to take into account seriously the protection of the environment and sustainable development. But these go together. Sustainable development has the social and the economic there. So I believe that through education, but also through the biosphere reserves and the way in which we manage and bring the societies with us, which is not easy. We had two persons today showing us the difficulties. And I'm not out of the reality romantic. I know the difficulties, but I continue to believe that we have the power and the duty to inform and insist on the right way, to show the right way and insist on that. And we'll find allies. We have allies. So I think it is time for any additional intervention from the floor before we make some conclusions and conclude the session of today. Who wants to take the floor? I don't see any request. I don't know, Hiro, if you want to say something or...
Yeah, there have been indeed, there has been many comments on trust, and throughout these universities, we have been coming over and over this huge issue of mistrusting and how much time, consistency, strong stomach or allies. It's a multi-phased problem, takes a multi-phased and constant, but hopeful, as you said, trials to overcome. and continuity. So young and old alongside, or junior officers together with older and more experienced officers. We have, as you said, the moral obligation, I think, to keep on trying. This is my position towards it. But,
Well, I thank you for that, because some of these should be some of the bullet points we need to put forward. I mean, the discussion we had today includes a number of points. I try to summarize. The hard reality, the realities are that we have serious environmental and natural resources issues to solve. And this does not escape. I mean, everybody understands that. And I believe that it is not so much an issue of awareness. Of course, we have a lot to do as awareness, but we say now a little bit the Greek philosophy, that we have the issue of akrasia. That means we know what is right, but we don't have the strength to follow it. We don't have the strength as individuals or collectively as society to follow what we know that is correct, because of our vested interest, because of our weaknesses, because we are lazy, because of inertias, but it's not that we don't know that we have in front of us catastrophes and serious problems. So this is the starting point. We need not only to then to pass the message about the problem, but also about the inertia that we have. So we change and develop also our messages, because this is important. And this, what helps us there is that from protection and the alarmist approaches, we have in parallel, I'm not saying to abandon them totally. In parallel, we have sustainable development. We have the solutions of economy and society coming together with the environmental protection. And this is something that all of us need to grasp, understand, and pass. This is the important message, particularly for areas like the biosphere reserves. And this is, from the beginning was the idea, but now it is the moment that we apply in an efficient, effective way. Second is the issue of legislation. The legislation is improving all over the world and the Mediterranean. We need to use it, and we need to use it in all possible ways. Even sometimes, I mean, advocating, but if necessary, we have also the right for access to justice against those who violate that. And this is also within the Aarhus Convention and all the legislation of the European Union, but also now we try to pass this legislation also to the rest of the Mediterranean countries. The third thing is the long term of education from kindergarten to universities, with emphasis on universities, because there are the leaders immediate, the young, the youth that is becoming the leaders of today or tomorrow immediately. So we need to put even more emphasis there. With the universities, we try to pass charters, sustainability charters in universities, in order actually to give also instruments to So there is enough work that we have to do there also with Jonathan, with UNESCO and at all levels, but also bringing some of them close to the biosphere reserves to understand the real problems and see where are the gaps and the weaknesses. I think I stop here for today, and I pass the floor to Jonathan to conclude the meeting of today.
No, just by thanking everyone who was on today's meeting. I think it's been a great exchange. I think it's important, as Michael says, to have these interactions both from people that are on the ground and the different sites, and you know, to us as well at UNESCO, so that we realize what's going on the ground level. Of course, we do that through, you know, different projects and working with different sites in different ways, but it's always interesting to hear exactly what's going on the ground, the difficulties encountered, and try to find solutions together by discussing and by exchanging best practices among the different sites, and coming up with the best ideas of how we can move forward and towards sustainable development. There is, you know, of course, UNESCO is involved. The whole of the UN is working together towards the Sustainable Development Goals, towards you know, adaptation to climate change, the different COPs, and there's a very important COP 15 that happened last year on biodiversity. So there's the international community is working towards all these different goals, and so, you know, you're not alone, and I think all of us together can really make a difference. So let's not get discouraged, and let's try to come up with some innovative solutions about how we can move forward and find solutions to the issues that are happening on the ground and biosphere reserves and other sites. So thank you very much from my side.
Thank you, and till next week.
Till next week. Bye.
We meet next
Okay.
week for the final call, and we talk more about education on the ground. See you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
For
Thank
being
you.
here. Bye-bye.
Bye.